Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. We have a smoking hot episode coming up. This is Ryan, the original outlaw of the airwaves, bringing you another episode of Hero Paranormal Podcast. Today we have a rock star, really, total hero, Danny Silva. He operates and runs the website, The Silva Record, where he covers UFO news and information. He focuses on developments and information related to UFOs, the work of the DoD's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, and to the Stars Academy. With all the information coming out about UFO investigations related to both of these groups, Danny has done a great job keeping people up to date with what's going on and maintaining the research going. I'm really excited to talk to Danny. He always has his hand on the pulse of everything going on UFO. Should be epic. Before we get to that, definitely check out our projects. HeroParanormal.com is the website. Also, if you want to download podcasts quicker and easier, go to the faster version, HeroParanormal.podbean.com. That's also an archive, and it has a whole bunch of goodies, even stuff for patrons if you decide to throw a couple bucks my way. And check us out on YouTube as well. iTunes, we're making the rounds. Haven't got to Patreon yet. I am just too darn slow, but I'm getting there. I know that there's all the reason to do it, and it will be done. Well, we are going to try to understand a little more about a very complicated subject. Sometimes it looks one way, sometimes it looks another way. Lots of info on the news about To the Stars Academy, Tom DeLonge, Luis Elizondo, Hal Puthoff, and the bunch. Danny Silva is going to help us navigate this landscape. Without further ado, Danny Silva, welcome to the Hero Paranormal Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Ryan.
I am super excited to talk about something that you know so much more about than most individuals, and that is this To the Stars Academy, all the info coming out in the news, on TV shows, Tom DeLonge, Hal Puthoff, Luis Elizondo, the list goes on and on. It's getting very interesting navigating this landscape and seeing exactly where this is headed.
Yeah, they're doing a lot. I feel like they're doing the most right now, at least in the public eye. And ever since the ATIP revelations, a lot of things have changed for a lot of people, and including me.
And with the revelations, what kind of things have you noticed, Danny?
Oh, you mean since the revelations happened?
Right.
Well, it's gone into the media, and it's okay to talk about it at least a little bit more than it was before that. And a lot of that is thanks to the Stars Academy and the media push, and they brought out the Navy pilots. I mean, there wasn't all these Navy pilots before 2017 coming out, going on record. It happened with the Tic Tac event, which was on the West Coast, and there's been consistent information coming out about that. Just recently, we heard Chad Underwood talk for the first time, and he's the guy that actually recorded the video. A lot of people thought Dave Fravor recorded it, but it was actually Chad Underwood. And then there was the follow-up New York Times article in 2019 about the East Coast events, the Gimbal, and we heard Ryan Graves and Danny Acoin and other pilots come out, and those are actually active duty pilots. So, it's one thing if you hear an experiencer out on a farm or something, and not to take anything away from them, telling their experience, but it's just more credible, at least to the public at large, when military personnel are talking about it. And, hearing these guys speak, Elizondo always says that we're trusting them to protect our country. We're trusting them with, weapons and $1 million of equipment, flying these planes around. So we definitely need to be trusting them when they come out with these experiences that they've had and things that they've seen.
I totally agree that getting these bigger names, people that are very legitimate out there, that is, it's giving a sort of legitimacy, like you said, that we've never seen before, ever. And I think you're right. There's something to that, and it leaps and bounds just in 1 year compared to the previous. It seems like every year is like more magical as far as the stuff that is getting declassified.
Yeah, and back to the media. There's just more coverage of it now. I get contacted by mainstream journalists every once in a while, and I'm friends with some of them now, and they're covering the topic seriously. And a lot of people don't like Tucker Carlson for whatever reason. Other people support him. I'm not political with that kind of thing, but I think his UFO coverage is great, and that's a national TV show, national news broadcast, and he's continuously covered the UFO topic in short spurts, but he's doing it, and he's gotten some great comments from Elizondo and other people too.
That is so cool. And Tom DeLonge is he says things that I think sometimes getting him in trouble. He's very passionate, but also sometimes he says things that ring very true, even even if you're on the fence with everything. And I think that something's brewing, because he apparently is breaming. It would be hard to know something and not be able to talk about it.
Yeah, Tom, brings the kind of regular guy, even though he's a rock star. He kind of approaches the UFO thing as more of a regular guy. And, I would be as excited as he is. A lot of times he'll tweet or post on social media, and that's just him saying things. It's not a representation of what the rest of To the Stars Academy at large believes. It's just him talking, and he jokes around a lot and stuff too. And he gets flack for it, and I understand that. But, he's not some big businessman. He's just a person, and he gets excited and he tweets. But on the other side of it, he said a lot of things that he's backed up. I mean, he went on Rogan before any of this happened and said that, kind of laid out what they were going to do in a lot of ways. And he backed it up with Elizondo coming out, talking about ATIP, and he backed it up with the Tic Tac event, which is now, known across the world. It isn't as known as we'd like it to be in the public circles, but it's known, definitely in the paranormal communities, and even just a lot of people that watch the news or things like that. I mean, Bernie Sanders commented on it last week, and other politicians are being asked about it now in the presidential race, and they're familiar with David Fravor, and they're familiar with the Tic Tac incident. So it's huge, and this was brought out because of To the Stars Academy, and in many ways, Tom has put his money where his mouth is. He says a lot of other things that he hasn't backed up, sure, but the main points I think he has backed up at this stage.
Yeah, he's got some. It's pretty impossible things to accomplish, and I wouldn't be envious of his position. It would be very difficult. I'd have to do some soul searching. I wanted to kind of jump a little bit, Danny, to this is so cool. It's actually something on your website that interests me very much, and that is Keith Basterfield and how he's been digging into the now defunct NIDS, National Institute for Discovery Science website. And could we talk about that a little bit? Because just when this is so similar, when you think you know everything, things come up and you're just like, whoa, connecting the dots can get just more and more interesting. And I thought it was pretty amazing, the statistics and the stuff they were, for field investigation, NIDS being, especially back then, they had some very interesting stuff that kind of, I think, may have revolved around parts of, well, it did, Utah, New Mexico, and I believe Arizona. And
Yeah, I'm sorry.
oh no. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about that and the instrumentation they were using to like detect magnetic electrical fields, electromagnetic nuclear radiation, visible and infrared detection, spectrometry. They were up to that back then, and I just wanted to kind of get into that if that's cool.
NIDS was like an all-star cast, and of scientists and researchers, and they were doing a lot back then. It was pretty amazing that it's like 2 decades ago now that they were really making moves, but they were doing a lot, as you know, with Skinwalker and everything else, and just the cast of characters that were involved back then is amazing to try to research now what these guys are doing, but. NIDS was great, and in a lot of ways, NIDS affected what To the Stars Academy is doing now. Bigelow kind of made a precedent of how to take some of this stuff seriously, I think. And I'm not an expert exactly on everything with it, but Keith Basterfield and I, we spent a lot of time on the old NIDS website just digging stuff up. Keith did a great job with it, and I was able to find a few things. Other people have been digging on that website on the Wayback Machine. Because the website's gone now. But, a lot of the stuff they turned up was really amazing, and I wish everything that they did would come out. We've seen it in some of these leaks, and so not everything that they worked on is public, but I think they did find some other interesting things. The story kind of goes that they weren't able to find a lot of solid evidence of Skinwalker, but at the same time, I think they did find a lot. So I just hope more of it comes out. And NIDS was just really historic when you look back on it, and everyone was involved with NIDS at the time. It seemed like that was a major player in the paranormal world. So I think there's a lot more to be told with their story, and I just love trying to uncover some of it.
Yeah, the players are just so like out of this world. I mean, Robert Bigelow and his beliefs, which are just magnificent for somebody in his position. And that kind of want just to merge a little bit into Bigelow Aerospace. There's some pretty neat stuff. This is older stuff, but a lot of I'm amazed at how many people aren't aware of it. Like back in September at Bigelow Aerospace, there was like an orb, and I can only imagine that the security and ventilation systems and everything is just, ridiculous at Bigelow Aerospace, and that's just from the outside. And this was interesting. Do you think this was in honor of just kind of for fun of the Storm Area 51 movement, or could you tell us a little bit about it?
I think he did post it probably because of Storm Area 51, and he liked that energy. Now, the orb video itself was from 2011. A lot of people became frustrated when they posted it, and I understand why, because they didn't put out a lot of information with it. But talking to people behind the scenes, and I got some anonymous quotes on my blog about it, they really think it was a real orb video. A lot of people wrote it off as dust or a bug or something like that, but it was a highly secure facility. The details of it, I still haven't been able to uncover all the details because it sounded like most people that knew a lot about it had to sign NDAs or something like that, and it was just real tight security on it. And but Bigelow and his team were sitting on this video for 8 years, and they were passing around behind the scenes. Not too many people got to take a look at it. Only really serious people looked at it, and they were pretty sure it showed something, if not positive. So the fact that people think it's a bug or dust, of course it occurred to them in those 8 years. And like you said, the facility was really secure. I haven't been able to confirm 100% if there was even airflow in there, but I don't think there was. And, I think it probably is a real orb video. Do I know 100%? No, I don't. But I've spoken to really serious people off the record, and they 100% think it is a real video of an orb. And I think possibly that orb did other things that aren't public yet. At the time, we were hoping that Bigelow would come out with more information about it. They haven't yet. but I really look forward to that day if they do, to kind of give pause to some of these critics about that. But when you have these huge scientists and important people looking at these videos and they think they're real, it really makes me think twice and really take it seriously. So I think it probably is a real orb video, and I think if all the unreleased facts about the backstory of that video came out, it would change a lot of minds.
Yeah, there's a lot of bright minds in a small space, and they are not going to let anything through the slide that's not going to pass their smell test. I agree. That is interesting. I mean, very, very senior aerospace individuals on site. So Colm Kelleher, senior aerospace program manager for Bigelow Aerospace, very involved as well in To the Stars Academy.
Yeah, Colm was a member of To the Stars. He actually left recently, in the last few months. He stepped away from To the Stars, but he has history with NIDS. He co-wrote the Skinwalker book with George Knapp, and he's been with Bigelow the whole time, and he is still currently with Bigelow. He stays pretty quiet. He doesn't make a lot of public comments. We'd like to make some more, but I know he talks to people behind the scenes, and he does real serious work with Bigelow. Now, of course, he's been working on the aerospace stuff and with NASA and things like that on behalf of Bigelow. But Colm's a real serious guy, and it's amazing to hear, once again, these people that are so serious be interested in the paranormal at the same time. Cole's story is amazing, and I hope he would do some more interviews, maybe go on Coast with George or something like that. I'd really like to hear an update on his life and what he's been doing recently.
Yeah, he is such an interesting guy and such a nice guy. Such a nice guy. One of the most amazing stories, Danny, that you have pinpointed is I've heard about the torpedo with Commander Dave Fravor and a possible unidentified submerged object. Yeah,
that was an amazing story that the public first heard from Dave Fravor, and it shocked a lot of us when we heard it. It was really cool. It was secondhand from Fravor. It didn't happen to him. Someone told him about it, and then he spoke about it on Rogan. And millions of people jumped on it at that point because he had talked about it with Jeremy Corbell, I think, like a year prior. But when he talked about it on Rogan, it started getting a lot of media attention, and people were kind of just recycling the story. For those that aren't familiar, basically, they are dummy torpedoes or training torpedoes that the Navy, I guess they shoot them off, and then they rise to the surface of the ocean. And for training, they hang a man out of a helicopter on a rope, and they kind of dip him down into the water to grab it and then pull it back up into the helicopter. They do that with torpedoes and also BQMs. And on the first occasion, I think it was a BQM, they grabbed it, but when they grabbed it, they saw a dark mass under the BQM as they were going back up. And then on the second occasion, the same thing happened. However, this time it was a torpedo, and then before they were even able to grab it, the dark mass actually grabbed the torpedo and sunk it down and took it, and they never saw it again. So it's a really weird story. They said it was about the size of a submarine. I guess, if you're a critic, and I understand this, we don't know for a fact, maybe it was some sort of like large sea creature or something like that. We don't know. But, they were taking it seriously like it was unidentified submerged object, basically like a UFO underwater. And so we've been following that story. It's just real amazing. I've been hoping that the person that it happened to, that talked to Dave Fravor, would go on the record. Fravor actually mentioned to Joe Rogan that the original New York Times article was actually interested in getting this guy on the record. And then they kind of backed off. They wanted more recent encounters, because that apparently happened in the 90s, whereas the Tic Tac was 2004 and the gimbal was 2015. But that would have been really cool if they had that also in the Times and get that guy to speak. And then just last week, a recent Tom DeLonge interview, he talked about To the Stars also being interested in that story. So maybe they'll include it in Unidentified Season 2. I hope they're able to dig more up on it. I think their back is kind of against the wall. It's going to be an uphill battle with that because it happened in the 90s, and it's going to be kind of hard to get more information on it, I think. But I think the main thing that is possible is that maybe this guy will come forward and talk, and that's what I'm hoping for. But even if they just cover it on Unidentified, it'll be cool to get more people kind of interested in the story. And without a lot of hard facts on it, I think it's just kind of an interesting and fun story more so than like something that will be well documented like the kind of thing. But it does have more military witnesses, so that's always taken seriously.
That is really cool. When you have military caliber people as witnesses, and there's, even in this case, I mean, in a lot of cases, it's just stories secondhand, but there's still stories, and it's, close associations. Something I wanted to kind of delving a little bit into the military is the relationship between UFOs and nukes. This is so cool. It's something you had on Silva record, and it is the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, basically talking with people in India, because could you go into that, the identified aircraft and how they might pose a risk to flight safety and other things like nuclear war?
Yeah, a friend of mine, Sabir Hussain, a researcher from India, he started basically a type of petition for the Indian government where he lives, and there's already heightened military, scares and things like that over there between Pakistan and India, and they started to get worried that basically some of these UFO incursions or sightings around nuclear bases could be taken as an act of war by either of those countries. So the idea is they don't want that to happen. They don't want a nuclear war or another act of war to occur between those two countries, and it's very possible that a UFO flying around could do that. So he spoke to researchers all over the world and scientists, and he got Elizondo to write a letter to the Chief Justice of India, as well as Hal Puthoff, and I was able to release those letters exclusively on the website, and basically they just they reiterate that these UFOs and nukes incursions happen pretty regularly, and that the two countries should show restraint because they don't want that to occur. Sabir had a lot of resistance, but he's still going at it. I don't know if it's ever going to come to anything. You can imagine going before a court judge and saying, watch out for UFOs, they're not going to take you seriously. But they were trying, Sabir's trying really hard, and it's just cool to see Elizondo and Hal Puthoff and To the Stars kind of jumping in on world events like that and trying to help, basically.
Yeah, they just class act individuals. The other question I wanted to talk to you about is one that is just, so undermentioned, and I think such an amazing character is Eric Davis and everything he's been involved with for decades. I mean, just decades.
Yeah, he was in NIDS. He was around Bigelow. He was working for Hal Puthoff for years. He recently left Earth Tech due to funding issues. And now he's working in Alabama, I think in the aerospace industry or something like that. But we kick around nicknames for him. He really doesn't bite his tongue very often, especially when he's feeling it and he's on a roll, and he really lets a lot of great information out. So we call him One Man Disclosure. Another friend of mine calls him the Honey Badger. But we really appreciate it when he talks, and he's a genius, I think. And so he's said a lot of different things. I've been wanting to write some blogs and just recap some of the amazing things he's said over the years. But like I said, he just doesn't bite his tongue. And I would really hope he would write a book or something like that and just let a lot out. And I'm hoping that since he left Earth Tech now, it's not going to be, kind of his swan song into the paranormal world. I don't think it will be. And he still is friends with a lot of important scientists that research this stuff. So I think he's going to kind of pop up other places now. But I love hearing from Eric Davis. He said a lot of things over the years. Let me try to think of some of them off the top of my head. He was talking about crashes. He's talking about crash retrieval programs, UFO crashes, of course, and how some of the government crash retrieval programs weren't successful necessarily, but they were successful in getting the crashes, just not really successful in re-engineering the tech. He supposedly had his experience at Skinwalker. He was on site on Skinwalker studying it for years with NIDS. It just kind of goes on, and his story is really amazing. He supposedly saw a UFO when he was in college, I think in Tucson, Arizona. Of course, he was involved with the Wilson document leak, for people who take that seriously and think it was a real document. He supposedly talked to Admiral Wilson, and it kind of goes on and on and on. He's just this huge knowledge base, and if he's saying this stuff during interviews, you only can imagine what he hasn't been saying publicly that he knows. And he does talk about NDAs, I think, and things like that too. Another friend of mine, James, got him to kind of reiterate after Elizondo went on Tucker Carlson. Tucker asked him about, does the government have UFO wreckage or UFO debris? And Elizondo said, simply put, yes. And then my friend James Iandoli got Eric Davis to reiterate that and say that's 1,000% true. And he was talking about crashes as well as landed craft. So that's another thing we can kind of think of, that not all these crashes occur on accident. Sometimes the craft will just land, and apparently it's found by government people or something like that. I mean, it wasn't backed up with evidence, but it's something I take seriously if Eric Davis says it. So, and there's many more things he's said over the years that will just kind of blow your mind, and it's just one sentence here or there in an interview. He's done these amazing interviews with Alejandro Rojas and George Knapp and people like that, and we love that guy, and I hope to hear more of him in the future.
Yeah, he is a great guy. He really is. And talk about amazing astrophysics papers and warp drive stuff. When I was looking at the stuff that, and it's amazing. It's just absolutely mind blowing. And the Wilson thing is, that really blew over, didn't it? Like, that was such the big, huge disclosure. And it just kind of puttered out for people that missed it. It's like one of those, if you were on vacation, you missed it. And it puttered out. I haven't heard much else from it. And I think you're right. It's probably not going to see much more coverage. But moving on with the group, NIDS and the group there, one that is like kind of the opposite of Eric Davis is Jacques Vallée. I mean, both awesome guys, neatest guys, but I'm like, wow, Jacques just does an amazing job of saying what needs to be said, but not letting out information that is confidential. Or at least it seems that way.
Vallée is much more pragmatic, and he's more conservative, I would say, with what he says. Now, he also believes that there's been crashes, I would think. But then he's actually commented on my website recently. So I got to be careful. He was saying it was kind of irresponsible to call them metamaterials or UFO debris or ultra materials or whatever we want to call it. So it's hard for me to speak for him. But, he's doing this work, testing these materials currently with Dr. Gary Nolan, who's a great mind. And, Vallée is kind of like the Michael Jordan of ufology. And he's written all these amazing books, probably the best books ever written on the subject. He doesn't agree with some things on how people do some things, and he isn't afraid to kind of give his opinion. And many people don't agree with him either. But, regardless of that, he's done great work over the years. And I think a lot of these guys, as they're getting older, I think they're going to start releasing more. There was a blog I saw recently about, he was talking about some documents that he had, and he didn't want to put them out, and I think he put them in, I don't remember where he put them in, but he said they would come out in about 10 years. So I think as these guys get older, there's going to be these kind of caches of documents and information that they're going to be letting out that they might get in trouble for putting it out while they're alive, or while they're in the prime of their lives, but I think they're going to end up coming out later on, and I think that's going to be true with a lot of the aging scientists and researchers and legends in the field. So I'm, stressed about these guys being gone and us not having them in the community, but at the same time, it'll be cool when some of these secret files get out, and that'll probably be the case with Valet. And he also has his library and all of his research that I think he's going to be giving to someone as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'm glad that you mentioned that he was doing work with Dr. Gary Nolan. I wanted to ask you, Danny, there's a really interesting thing that you have written about on the Silva Record about experiencers, unique intuition, and biomarkers, and it just goes crazy delving into this. Could you kind of tell a little bit about that?
I can. I'm not able to speak about it very well. That's actually the only blog or article on my website I did not write. That was written by a friend of mine. He kind of calls himself Twitter User J. But that's work that Kit Green and Dr. Gary Nolan have been doing on experiencers, or not necessarily even experiencers. It's people that have been affected by kind of anomalous things. And although it is titled experiencers. And it's hard for me to recap it. A lot of the science is pretty technical, but it's that's basically the jumping off point, and they want other scientists on board. And I have heard of some universities and things like that are trying to get into it now. So I would say everyone go and read that. It was really kind of Dr. Gary Nolan and Dr. Kit Green to put that out through my blog and through another blog. They could have went to the New York Times and given them that information and probably had a big story, but they kind of just wanted to put it out and kind of let people think about it a little bit more. But, that could be groundbreaking work. I think it is. And, in 50 years from now or something like that, people may be referring back to it. And I think it's just the tip of the iceberg, basically. But in many ways, they were able to look to a part of the brain, which is the caudate putamen, and think that if there's extra connections or extra maybe activity, I'm probably messing this up, I think it's extra activity in that part of the brain, you may be more inclined for psychic ability or other things like that. So it's groundbreaking. They're trying to prove some of these more paranormal topics and issues, and they're doing it through science. So I'm really interested to see where that goes, and I think in the future there'll be a lot more work done on it.
I can't wait to keep up on it. Yeah, I was blown away by, how they obviously they can't disclose all the slides, but special populations have the high IQ, high intuition, high performers, generational genetics. I mean, it starts getting very interesting. That's something to definitely keep an eye out for. Holy cow, that's very cool indeed. Getting back to TTSA and the metamaterials that everybody is seeing on TV through TV shows, and we hear about it going as far back as Art's Parts, the old Art Bell. This is, you would think at this point that there would be some acceptance, but there's still a lot of pushback, isn't there, by the public, or how's that going?
The pushback in the public and the skeptics, they want hard science on it, and I understand that in many ways, because you can say you have pieces of a crashed UFO all day, but they want proof of it. And luckily, it's not only to the Stars Academy that's getting into this stuff. Jacques Vallée and Gary Nolan are also testing pieces. It's going to be, I think, covered in the new James Fox documentary titled "The Phenomenon." It's in Diana Pasulka's book, American Cosmic. The alias of Tyler and the alias of James, they have pieces. She was allegedly taken to a crash site, and they found pieces there. So it's not just To the Stars that are doing this. It's kind of beyond me why To the Stars gets the most flack about it when other people are making similar claims. They're just doing it with aliases, or even making stronger claims, especially in the American Cosmic book, but they're doing it with aliases. But To the Stars comes out and uses their real names, and they get all the flack for it. But regardless of the flack and the criticism, I think it's amazing and it's great, and it's I hate to use the word, more nuts and bolts. And I think if we're going to be convincing people basically of what's going on, this may be the route to do it, because lights in the sky aren't necessarily going to do it. It's going to be science. And Dr. Gary Nolan's on the forefront of it, and he's talked about it a little bit. He's tweeted about it. He's talked about it in interviews, and he's totally separate from To the Stars Academy. So that's great to me that more than one group of people are working on this. And, you know, if I had my way, To the Stars will come out with some stuff. They're working on it with in their Army situation called the CRADA, and so they have the Army labs working on it, and then Dr. Gary Nolan has his own lab, the Nolan Lab, working on it, along with Jacques Vallée, and there's probably other people like in the book American Cosmic Tyler is probably working on some things too, and there's probably a bunch of other people we don't know about. You know, you can get more conspiratorial. Has the government had these pieces for decades, and do they already know that they're anomalous? Maybe. You know, it's hard to tell. And then also, you know, you have to kind of figure out what exactly is proof. What would make it proof? What would prove that these come from a UFO? I mean, can you say that they're just anomalous and then assume that they come from a UFO, or can you say there's nothing like it on the planet, so they must come from a UFO? I don't know if that'll work in the skeptic's mind, but I think it's great steps forward, and it's some of the first steps. But the simple fact that there's so many of these pieces floating around, and there's so many of these stories of crashes, if maybe we can use it as anecdotal evidence or more that some of these crashes occurred. I mean, if someone saw a crash and then they found a piece in the same area, you know, that's just more wood on the fire that something weird happened and maybe there really was a crash. So I'm looking forward to it, and I think it's going to be a big deal, you know, going forward and in the future, and it may even end up being more important than military eyewitnesses, because it's tangible and it's something people can hold. And, you know, a lot of people talk about the peer review testing. So if it's peer reviewed in science journals or wherever else, you know, that's stuff you can kind of take to the bank, and supposedly it's reproducible testing. So it's huge, and it's going to be a big deal. And it's just something, it's one more thing that we can kind of look forward to. So I think the To the Stars Academy CRADA is going to be great with that, and I expect that coming out probably not, or if it does come out, either in 2020 or 2021. You know, sometimes it's kind of a long haul, and you know, even people like Gary Nolan, he's working on other stuff. He's, you know, works on these cancer issues, so he's not only just 24/7 working on metamaterials or anything like that, but you know, he has the chance to also work on it. So we kind of have to play by their timelines, but it's extremely exciting, and it's got to be the biggest thing in ufology probably right now.
It's huge. I think when DeLong was on Rogan, I was blown away by the conversation, and when it went into metamaterials and the things DeLong said were possible or can happen with this stuff. And it takes a lot of science to prove this, first of all. And I think that's the big thing. You need a special environment. I mean, apparently if you hit this metal with enough energy, it becomes weightless. I mean, that's pretty mind blowing.
Yeah. And I would like to see that be produced in the lab or something like that. But even if that isn't exactly the case, and I'm thinking it is, but even if it isn't, I think they'll be able to look at it in other angles and other ways, and get some great information out of it. You know, I hear a ton of other things behind the scenes, of course, about these materials. But yeah, they can get this thing to be weightless, or they can show that, you know, it becomes slightly less heavy, I guess would be the better way to put it. But yeah, it's going to be huge. And, you know, many people think, you know, have said, well, why would someone make this and then throw it out in the desert? Like, it would take billions of dollars supposedly to make some of this material, even if we could. And some people say we can't, but even if we could make it, you spend billions on it and then you throw it out in the desert. So this doesn't make sense. But yeah, and we got to remember the Rogan claims, you know, that was before the Elizondo stuff. So I'm looking forward to Tom putting money where his mouth is, and it really seems like they're doing that. And again, like I said, we have other groups like Gary Nolan working on it. So it's forward progress, and it's all positive movement.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. Tom DeLonge did say like what you said. He said that he wouldn't have said it was weightless, right? Because I think Rogan tried to like put him in a corner and say, so it'll be weightless. And I think Tom said, well, I wouldn't quite say weightless. So that's so cool. It loses mass. Yeah, that is really amazing stuff. As far as Lou Elizondo, he had some comments in a recent thing I saw that were so epic. It was great. It reminded me a lot of kind of like Utah's, kind of the eerie spots of Utah. And I think he said it's similar to the stuff that Tom says. You know, like if you knew what you were dealing with, you wish you didn't know, or what we are dealing with possibly. Here's the quote. And I actually got this from silvarecord.com, your website. The phenomena may seem hard to believe. We ignore the facts at our own peril. That is so poignant, you know?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, that was in the letter to the Indians Supreme Court. Yeah, it's a great line, isn't it? And we really can't just be ignoring this kind of stuff. Elizondo also said, I think it was at the MUFON conference, that, you know, this conversation should have been started 30 years ago or something in the public. And it really didn't get started publicly as far as the government's concerned until 2017 when he came out. So that's what they've done. That's what the stars have done. They've got the conversation started now. And some people think it's trickery and it's a psyop and stuff like that. I don't agree with that. I think they're doing their best, and they aren't the government. You know, To the Stars Academy is not the government. You know, I think that's been made clear with some of the muddier comments or negative comments by Pentagon spokespeople, that there's people in the government that don't want Elizondo doing what he's doing, and they don't want this information out. That's clear now. So, you know, at first some of us thought that, To the Stars Academy came out in 2017. Obviously, this is the government's way to get this stuff out. But that may not be the full story or accurate at all even. And I think they're just a faction of people, and it may have been a perfect storm. And also, I'm sure there are some people in government that do want this out. But government isn't one person. It isn't one group. It's tons of people and tons of smaller groups that make up the government. And there's people in the government that don't want this information out, and there's people that do. And now we're here a few years later, and there's been a lot of progress made. People get frustrated that things aren't happening quick enough. Well, you know, in like 50 years from now, you know, they're not going to be like, oh, yeah, that came out. I mean, they're not going to care about a 5-year, 2-year gap 50 years from now when they're reading about it in a history book. This trap where we want it all quick and we want it now. And I do too, and that's part of the reason why I started my blog, is because I just wanted more information all the time. And I still do, but, you know, we got to kind of take some of this stuff into consideration, that it's been a relatively short amount of time and we've gotten a lot of information already. The simple fact that at first, you know, they were just talking about the Tic Tac. No one was talking about metamaterials or UFO debris outside of the UFO community. You know, Jacques Vallée was in his books and other UFO people were. But nobody really outside of the community was. Now we have Elizondo going on Fox News saying the government has UFO debris. And then later on, Tucker Carlson asked Donald Trump during an interview if he had heard similar things. Trump, of course, denied it. But, I mean, he asked the president about UFO debris. I mean, it's pretty crazy the times we're living in. And I think people need to kind of not take it for granted about what's happening.
Yeah, you're so right. And there's so much that you do to like kind of keep people informed, Danny, and it's pretty amazing. The Silva Record is such a great thing. Can you tell our listeners just kind of, you know, what features or news or posts you have coming down the pike, or interviews or appearances, what you got going on, and how they can stay in touch with Silva Record and stuff like that?
I don't always know exactly. I know things I'm trying to work on, but I don't always know my next post. Especially this year, it's been harder for me, and it kind of just comes as it comes, and I don't so I don't know what my next post is going to be. But you can always go on the website silvarecord.com. You can go Twitter Silva Record. You'll hear me talking a lot of crap on there. You can go to Danny Silva Record on Instagram, Silva Record on Facebook. I also have Patreon, which is Silva Record. It's cool. When I first started this, you know, a couple of years ago, I was one of the only people blogging about it. And now there's much more people. There's articles in Vice and articles in magazines and things like that, and Daily Mail, and they're just all over the place now. So there's a lot more people interested. Washington Examiner, my friend Tom Rogan is covering it. Of course, we're talking about Tucker Carlson. So it's getting this media attention. So now it's not just me and a few others. Now it's a lot of other people. So I have a lot more competition now, and that's a good thing. And there's a lot of people covering To the Stars Academy now, so that's great. But yeah, like I said, on all social media, it's Silva Record, except Instagram is Danny Silva Record. And I try to kind of, even if I don't cover every single thing, I try to at least mention it so people can go on my website, silvarecord.com, and they can kind of get the latest news. Even if I'm not breaking the story, they'll be able to know the latest that's going on if they go on there.
Yeah, it is such an awesome website. I am just like blown away by it all the time. And you do such a good job. Definitely people should go on there. I think there's a donate button and kick you a couple bucks for sure. And Danny, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I can't wait to talk to you again and keep up with what's going on. And I hope we talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, man, keep doing what you're doing with Skinwalker. It sounds historic, and I loved hearing you on Coast to Coast with George Knapp, too.
Well, there it is, guys. The man with the plan, the most killer archive I've come across. It's just constantly up to date. Silva's an awesome dude. I hope to have Danny back soon because he just keeps on top of this like nobody else, and he's always in the know. So I was really happy to have him come on the podcast. Definitely check out Silva Record. Hit that donate button. Throw the guy a buck or two. He's on point. Check out heroparanormal.com if you want the archive. It's in the middle. And check us out on YouTube. Like and subscribe. For sure. Until next time, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground. But don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like it need Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off.
Let the bell ring, let the angels sing. Danny is the man. Go to silvarecord.com. That is where all the information that we were speaking about is archived and written about, and he puts it out on a regular basis. It's good stuff, and the articles are epic. Danny always has his pulse on everything UFO, and that includes To the Stars Academy and many of the players around that. it was really cool that we brought up some of the things that we talked about. The Wilson email thing is something that I was so interested in, and now I've totally forgotten about it. I'm going to have to look into that and see if there's anything going on with that. That was pretty interesting. That was an email chain, and it was talking about basically spacecraft housed in warehouses, but I don't want to get into it. It was a very muddled and long thing, but it was, at the time when it came out, there's a major disclosure. Danny always has a great way of navigating this landscape of science, government, disclosure, media, and the like. And I was super stoked that he agreed to be on the podcast. He's such a nice guy. Definitely go to his website, silvarecord.com. Hit that donate button. There is a PayPal button at his website. And I mean, he's doing a lot of work over there. A buck or two couldn't hurt. Also, check out heroparanormal.com. You can see all the podcasts there through a link to heroparanormal.podbean.com, which is the fastest way to download and play the podcast, especially if you don't want to watch it in video form on YouTube. That always takes longer to download. Just go to heroparanormal.podbean.com, and we have all kinds of goodies there for patrons, and we do on the website as well. In the meantime, keep your eyes to the skies, feet on the ground, but don't forget to take a look around.
Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine. Blast off, blast off, blast off, blast off. Come blast off in my time machine. Third eye feeling like an Visine.